time spent versus time invested. It's quite a simple thing in reality, but trying to get your head around it can be quite a challenging thing to do. I'll hold my hands up. This is something I still struggle with to an extent nowadays. And certainly when you're starting your own business, you're starting a property journey, whatever it is that you're doing, distinguishing the difference between time spent and time invested is absolutely crucial. Daniel Duffield and I spoke about this briefly on the 200th episode a little while back about the struggle of starting your business when you're in a time spent mentality and then adapting that to a time invested mentality. They are completely different things, and the tasks in which you do under time spent and time invested are most of the time completely different as well. So what do we mean by time spent? This is what we'll look at first. Then we'll look at what do we mean by time invested, and then we'll look at ways to effectively delegate tasks. Time spent is when you're in effect exchanging your time for money in one way, shape or form. So you're working at a job, you've got a salary, that sort of thing. You're exchanging your time at a place of work. You are getting remunerated as a result. You're exchanging your time for money. That is time spent. You're doing a task of any sort. So for example, you might be cleaning your house, or you might be doing your garden, or you might be doing some admin work or something along those lines. That's doing a task, that's time spent. You don't necessarily get remunerated for that, but you're utilising your time to conduct an activity without a reward at the end, or without a fiscal reward at the end. Maybe you're on an hourly rate. So maybe you do what I do. If every now and then, if I do an EPC, you take time to book in the client, or someone books in the client for you. You turn up to the property, you do what you need to do, you go away from the property, you produce a certificate, send it to the customer, they pay you, send them the invoice of course as well, they pay you. That's effectively, that can come under doing a task. It's also could be, under an hourly rate as well. You're exchanging your time for money, you're doing a task, you got an hourly rate for something that you do, that's time spent. And then anything that constitutes getting a one-time income. So that might be, for example, you run a mentorship program, you do strategy days like we do for people that are looking to get involved in property. We will sit down, take time out to work with budding investors, people that want to get involved in property. We'll take half a day, maybe it takes a day, maybe it takes a couple of days. We help that person, we get remunerated as a result. That person walks away with a hell of a lot of knowledge and hopefully will kickstart their journey. But again, that's a one-time income. That still comes under time spent. If you just think of it like this, you are exchanging your time for money, you're doing a task, an hourly rate, or you've got a one-time income for providing a product or service. That's time spent. Most of what we do in our lives, and I'm not saying that's everyone listening to this podcast, of course, property investors, we're business owners, chances are we're going to be predominantly on the time invested side. But amazingly, most of the things that we think we're doing, we like to think we're doing something else, but in fact we're just spending our time doing things. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's go on to the time invested side of things. Now, time invested will be producing things that provide a residual income. So you can call it passive income if you want. It's never truly passive, but you can call it that if you want. Residual income, recurring income, all of the above. So that might be in effect buying properties. That might be in effect viewing, if you want to, you're getting started, viewing properties, making offers, accumulating assets that are going to provide you a residual income moving forward. Of course, it doesn't just have to be property. You could be writing a book. You could be producing a podcast that will lead to training days in the future, lead podcast sponsorship, those sorts of things. That will create recurring income. You might also then be producing online training courses, for example. Things that that once you've plugged into your website and your web system, someone can follow the process, click, buy a course for a couple £100 or more, voila, and that's evergreen. So you're creating residual income. Leverage is another way to invest your time. So let's just say that you take quite a few hours a week cleaning or doing the more mundane tasks in life, and let's just say you don't get a reward out of doing them. Now, I understand that you might be listening to this and you might really enjoy gardening and you might find it therapeutic and it's your way to take a break from your business. Fine. If that's the case, then not an issue. That's understandable. But if you don't enjoy doing something, then don't do it. Simple. If cleaning your house is something you don't really enjoy, then don't do it. Pay someone else to do that for you. And this is where the challenge comes in, because you're probably listening to that thinking, yeah, Rob, that's going to cost me cash. Yes, of course it will. Absolutely. But think of the time that you've just saved. So if it takes you 2 hours a week to clean your house properly, fine. But if you're doing it on a Friday afternoon or whatever, what could you have done in those 2 hours that was more beneficial to you in your business rather than clean your kitchen? That's the way you've got to start thinking of it. And then this is what Daniel and I spoke about. That is the mental challenge that exists when we're talking about time spent versus time invested. Another way to time invest is to lead people, inspire your team, influence. Now, you might want to be doing it on social media. You might be doing what we're doing, producing podcasts, producing YouTube videos, Instagram content, these sorts of things. So taking time out to lead others, to inspire others, to influence others, that can lead to time invested. Because again, if you're growing your social media audience, you're growing your podcast audience, or all of the above, that can lead to recurring income happening. Managing and outsourcing, so then taking time to invest into managing other people, outsourcing things within your business. Let's just say you get to the stage where you are running a podcast and you're finding that you're taking too much time out on the computer, editing or connecting with people and booking people in for the podcast, these sorts of things. You can then take time to manage that process and outsource that process so someone else can do it for you. Because again, that will save up a lot of your time. Happy days. Other things will be training and building systems. Now, training can mean a multitude of things. It can mean training others to do things how you want them to be done. It could be creating courses, training other people through evergreen content. And building systems is crucial. How simple can you make something? How easy can that become? If you're finding that there's too many people involved, too many cooks spoil the broth, as they say, then how can you make that simpler? So if you have a simpler system, it makes life a lot easier. Now, we've done this on the podcast side recently, where, for example, we'd do a podcast recording, we'd do a video on the odd occasion, then that video goes over to YouTube, so go and check out YouTube. But also when the person that's being interviewed wants that video as well, again, we've created a very simple system. We've said to our admin guru, this is where the video is, this is what you need to do, here's the contact details, we'll leave that in your hands. That way we're not chasing around our tails, sitting on our computers all day, sending emails, sending videos, uploading this, downloading this, doing that, doing this, doing that. Because it burns our time when we can be out speaking to investors, doing deals, dealing with higher level activities. Now, you might be thinking, well, Rob, that sounds all right, but it's tough, it's challenging, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that, and I can't afford it, etc., etc. Number one, the word can't doesn't exist. Please do not use that word. It's a horrible word. It sets you up with a negative mentality from the start. You need to be asking yourself, how can I afford this? Until you get a lot of time in your life, it's difficult to put into words how crucial these things are. The minute you get more time, the easier or the better your life will become. And, I like saying I hold my hands up, but again, I'll hold my hands up when I say that I do not deal with a lot of the financial aspects of our business. I do not deal with a lot of, anything to do with banking, invoices or anything like that. I got to the stage where, Aaron's a better person at dealing with that than I am in general. So that's fine. It's in his hands. And thanks to the help of our mentor, it was a case of, Rob, you've got to let it go. almost act like you don't give a shit. Let it go, delegate it out, let someone else deal with it. Now that's easier said than done, because I like to be a bit of a control freak every now and then, and I always feel lost if I don't know what's going on. So mentally I've got to work on that, and the reason I say that is because it's probably something you'll have to work on as well. If you are never going to know exactly every single fine detail about what's going on about everything in the world, okay? There is an argument to say that you should know everything about your business. Yeah, fine, but if you're the one that's created the processes, or you've got other people, professionals in place that you trust to do that for you, then you've got to figure out a way to monitor that. That's what we mean by building systems as well. So hopefully that helps. Let's just roll through what we said about time spent. Time spent being exchanging time for money, effectively. Doing a task of some sort, excuse me, having an hourly rate, or doing something for a one-time income. That's time spent, and that's what most of us will do in our lives. We will have time spent. Then let's look at time invested. So time invested is utilizing your time to create residual income, passive income, recurring income. Time invested involves leveraging things out to other people. It involves leading, inspiring, and influencing. Now, whether that's recording podcasts, writing books, social media, it is what it is. Managing other people, outsourcing things where possible, delegating things where possible. Training, again, whether that's creating training courses or training people within your team. And then building systems. How can you make something simpler? How can it become easier, more efficient? How can you streamline that process? That's time spent versus time invested. What we all have to do is make a conscious effort to move from time spent over to time invested. That will involve inevitably at some point outsourcing things, leveraging things, and that can be quite scary. The reason you must do that is it will generate you more time to focus on the things that you are really, really good at. When it comes to delegation, when it comes to task management, there's traditionally, and a lot of people say that there's 4 Ds when you look at things. You either, number 1, you do it yourself. Number 2, you delegate it. Number 3, you just delete it. You don't do it. Number 4, you defer it. Now, task management is very useful, and it also takes a great deal of mental fortitude when deciding what to deal with what. Because if you are sat on your emails most of the day doing things, you will find that it can be it's quite easy to get sidetracked by something. You're working on a project, you're working on something. Oh, an email comes up about X, Y, and Z. It's not overly important, but because you want to clear it from your inbox, you just reply to it straight away. You lose focus, you lose time, and anything can happen from replying to that email. That's why I always recommend reading Cal Newport's work about time focus, time leverage. It's absolutely brilliant when it comes down to focusing on one task at a time, and the reasons why you have to do that, and the reasons why you have to say no a lot of the time as well, because the brain is wired to focus on certain things at a certain period of time. I believe the maximum amount of time your brain can properly function is 3 hours in a row. That is, there's some scientific studies somewhere, I think it was done in Latin America, that it's 3 hours. You can get 3 solid hours of good, mentally tough work done a day. After that, law of diminishing returns kicks in. I can't remember the name of the studies. I'm breaking my own rules by saying can't. I'm not able to remember the name of the studies, but Google it. I'm sure you will be able to find it. So the 4 Ds of task management, do it yourself. If it's something that you have to do it. So for example, that might be you are closing in on a deal to do a commercial conversion. You must deal with your power team, or you must visit site with your project manager or your architect. That's probably something you want to do yourself. You delegate it. So someone, for example, emails in and requests that they express interest at being on the podcast. Well, that's easy. We just get our admin guy to sort that out. Not an issue. Work it out. Here's a calendar. Book in a time that works. This is how we do it. You delete it. So you just ignore it. You just delete it. You just don't worry about it at all. Someone wants you to, I don't know. Again, you get an email. Someone wants you to take part in a satisfaction survey. Because you recently bought something from them or whatever. probably 9 times out of 10, that's not important. So you could probably delete that or defer it. You'll worry about it at a later date. Is it urgent? If it's not urgent, really just don't worry about it. So they're the 4 Ds of task management. I like to think I'm preaching to the choir, preaching to the converted as well. These are still things that, again, we all will struggle with from time to time, because most of us will still, in our mindset, have this money mindset of it's going to cost me X, Y, and Z. In cash, fine, but then you have to look at what's that going to cost you in time. And that's where you must look at delegating tasks, you must look at outsourcing, you must look at leveraging things. You must look at all of this as time invested, not time spent. If you continue to be in the time spent section, chances are you will not be creating passive income, you will not be creating residual income, you will not be creating recurring income. You need to head across to the time invested section and work your way across there. And also, don't come away from this episode beating yourself up. If you do things that involve time spent, I still do as well. If you enjoy doing something, do it. I always say to people, stuff like EPCs, and I can do retrofit assessments as well. I don't mind doing them because I enjoy being nosy around other people's homes. I also enjoy helping people. And, if I've got to do that once or twice a week for a couple of days, I don't mind because I enjoy doing it. I get to help people. It's absolutely fine. Is it the ultimate best use of my time? Sometimes it can be, sometimes it might not be. Depends on what else is going on in the week. So don't beat yourself up as well. I don't beat myself up with that. You can have a bit of time spent, that's okay, but you have to go across to the time invested section, be thinking about these passive incomes, residual incomes, recurring incomes, whatever you want to call them. Start delegating. And if you want time, we all want time, we all want more money, we all want more time. You can always get time back. You don't have to be rich, you don't have to be ridiculously wealthy to make these decisions now. It's about quality of life. I'm sure many of us will spend maybe tens, hundreds of pounds on things that you probably don't need per month. That might be going out, going to a football match, or spending too much on flowers or whatever. You just reallocate some of that cash, work out your numbers per month, and then, step by step, bit by bit, start delegating things, and you might find that it all works out for you in the end. So that's time invested, that's time spent. That's why you need to know the difference. It's crucial to understand the difference. Also crucial if you want to make the step from A to B. You have to know these things. You have to know what tasks are involved in either section. And also the 4 Ds of task management: do it yourself, delegate, delete, or defer. Practice makes perfect. You will become better at this as time goes on. We're by no means perfect. We get better at it every single day as well. That's that episode done. Join us next time for top 7 mistakes that people make when asking for money. I hope you enjoy listening to the travel episode as well. We've had some great feedback so far from the travel episodes, especially the one about being locked in hotel bathrooms in Holiday Inns in the USA. We live the life, what can we say? But thank you, do listen out for that. Travel episodes are every Thursday. We're recreating our steps from South and Central America. Of course, that will lead up to us hopefully heading out to the Middle East and Qatar at the end of 2022. Now, in the meantime, share the podcast with people. Like the podcast, do leave us reviews. We do enjoy reading them as well. Share the Property Nomads podcast with as many people as you can. And thank you very much for doing that. Catch you next week. Hasta luego.